kill off both, would also do it, but they lived in Charlottesville. They tell us some of the damnedest stories, scary stories. And we didn't have any electricity, just had lamps. And when you went from one room to another, there was no light, and when you had to go from the kitchen into the living room, you had to go through the place where we ate, and the dark. But they'd tell you about the banshees that would be in the house, and all sorts of critters. And they'd tell you the best stories you ever saw and you ever heard. And you just sit there and listen, and you'd be so scared you wouldn't want to move, man.
You wouldn't even get up to go to the bathroom at night for fear of what was in the house.
That's right.
All right. One of the things I want to talk about was you've told the story before about how you and Grace met. So I want you to relive that event again, and then talk about your wedding as compared to some of the other ones you've talked about.
All right. Well, I'd never seen Grace in my life until the first day of the third grade. And I was already in my seat and sitting with one of my buddies, and she and Flora Withers and Ann Saunders came into the room, and I saw her. And I said, oh my God.
We finally got some improvement in the women here.
I just fell in love right off the bat. And I don't think she knew I was living. But in the first grade, in that grade, they had a play that we were in around Christmas time. And she was, what were you?
Well, I was actually the main character.
I know it.
I was the little girl who was dreaming of sugar plums dancing through my hair.
And she was in the baby bed. And I was...
You were an orange.
I was what?
You were an orange. You were dressed up like an orange. See, I was dreaming of sugar plums and things that, like Christmas things. So there were different kinds of fruits, and there were candies, and
You don't remember being the orange, apparently.
I thought I was a kid.
That must have been another scene.
I have a faulty memory. You could have been a kitten.
I bet you had to have multiple characters in something like that.
Yeah. All these things that were dancing around me.
Because my mother made me a suit, a gray suit, you know, with a kitten head and a big tail on it.
That's true. Maybe you were a kitten.
And I was meowing around the bed there, and she was in it.
Maybe one of the Whiteheads was a orange.
It could have been someone else who was an orange.
But then we were in the third grade together and the fourth grade together, and the teacher liked me so much in the fourth grade, she kept me for another year.
Good for her.
And so I never was in the class with her again. But I watched her all the way through first year in high school. Finally I got nerve enough up at my home. My sisters had a party, and they didn't invite me, but they invited all of the girls my age. And asked Grace who she wanted to be with. She said, I'd like to be with Charles Lovin. Well, Charles Lovin was older than we were, and he was about the sorriest son of a bitch in the school. And after he went home, I got Grace on the inside front steps in the front hall and talked to her and for a long time. Told her what was in my heart. And next time we were together, a boy and I, that lived up in Arlington. He came down there every year and lived with the Lees. His sister was married to Lee. And he told me, he said, why don't we hitchhike to Arlington? He said, I got 2 bicycles and we'll ride them back. So I bought one from him on it. I didn't have any money. I bought it to him. I was going to pay him later. I never did pay him $5 for that bicycle. And when Robert was at the University of Virginia living down on East Jefferson Street with Mahone, I let him have his bicycle. He rode it back and forth to school at the university.
Now, which aunt did, who was it that Robert was living with?
The mother to Lucille, who married Nelson.
Okay.
Was your mother's sister?
Right.
Huh?
Ada's sister.
Your mother's sister.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we came back, we rode the bicycle from Arlington to Charlottesville and went to Mertz, and she fed us, and we got on our bicycles and headed back to Mass's Mill, and we went up West Main Street, and this truck stopped, and it was Carlton Grant, who lived next door to us. We threw our bicycles up on his truck and rode to Mass's Mill.
You'd had enough bike riding for one lifetime.
Well, that night, he and I rode over to Charlotte Gray's. I don't know how we knew Grace was over there,
She was having a party. Charlotta was having a party.
I guess.
Yeah.
And we rode our bicycles over there, and that's the first time I kissed Grace.
The rest is history.
And if you hadn't gotten that ride back on the truck, you might not have gotten back in time.
That's right, yeah.
And then we talked about getting married in high school, but we didn't do it. And the night she finished high school, James Parton and I went to graduation, and after the graduation we caught a bus to Baltimore. We were going to Baltimore because he had 2 sisters living up there, and we were going to look for a job. And we got a job at Eastern Electric. And our parents wouldn't sign for us to go in the Navy. And his daddy said, James, I'll sign for you when Mrs. Mahone signs for David. So they wouldn't sign. We went on up in Baltimore and got a job at Eastern Electric, worked night shift, and lived at the same house that Polish people owned it, and lived there, I'd say for 6, 7 weeks, and then came back because we decided we'd join the Merchant Marine. And so we joined the Merchant Marine. And
Didn't have to have your mother's
yeah,
approval for that?
Yeah, I had to have that. So we got the papers and took it home to our parents to sign them, and they wouldn't do it.
Reminds me of the episode on the Waltons where that happened.
And so
Was there an episode like that?
we went to work, or I went to work for Mr. Harvey in the Peaches. And James and some other boys that age went to work for the chemical company, happened to build a wash house for the employees where they could take showers and change their clothes. And he was making a whole lot more money than I was. But at that time, you had to get a release from the people you were working for before you could work somewhere else. You couldn't change jobs.
Was that a War Act issue?
Yeah. And so, but the Baltimore job, hell, we just didn't go back. We never told anybody that we worked there. Or we told our friends and parents and so forth. But we didn't tell the people we wanted to get a job with. So Mr. Harvey, when it came time that I wanted to work at the plant, he wouldn't give me a release. The plant said you have to have a release. And we finally talked him into it. But he was paying us 10, 12 cents an hour. And the plant was paying 25, 30 cents. But he finally gave it to us, and we went to work at the plant. I did. And then I had to go back to high school another year. Grace went to Madison College. And when we were young, the boys drank a lot. And I'd go over to see at Madison College with another boy that went with her roommate.
You came to a dance.
I know I did.
Okay.
But I also came over to Elton a couple of weekends, a couple of Sundays.
Okay.
But went to formal dance over there, and they were strict. And her roommate, a girl from down in the eastern part of the state, had a date, and he and I stayed in a house that was approved by the college. And we had a little bit to drink, but we couldn't smuggle it into the dance. And the rule was that you could go to the dance, but when you came out, you had to stay out, and you had to get your date back to her dorm within 10 minutes. And so we hid our bottle of whiskey out in the bush, and we were figuring out how in the hell we were going to get out there. Finally, he disappeared for a while, and he came back. Oh, yeah. So he found a way to go down in the basement, go through a hall down in the basement, over to the next building where the furnace room was, over the coal pile and out the window. And we
In
had
his
good-
tuxedo.
In his formal wear.
But in the second year that she was over there, I dropped out of school.
You joined the Navy.
I joined the Navy. And
With
my
your parents' permission?
mother signed for me.
What
Finally
year,
got old enough.
what year was this now?
1945.
Okay.
And I was still in boot camp when the war was over. But I had to stay in there until I was 21. Most of the kids that went in at that time got out 6, 8 months after the war was over.
So you were 18,
I was 17.
17, okay.
But the reason I had to stay in 21, we had a big party. This boy James Ponton and I had been friends all our life, and he's the one that his daddy wouldn't sign until my mother signed. And we went to Lynchburg and they signed for us, and I got called to Richmond about a week later for induction. I thought it was induction. And they ran me through a all-day physical, and then told me at the end of the day to go on back home, and they'd call and let me know when they want me. And I said, I can't do that. We had a going away party, and I'm going in the Navy. I've been trying to get in the Navy for 4 years. They said, well, it's only one way you can do it, and that's join the regular Navy. See, everybody, most of 99% of the people that fought the war were in the reserves. When they weren't in reserves before they went in, before they were drafted or signed up. But the day they signed up for the reserves, which meant that they would be discharged roughly 6 months after the war was over.
So somebody like Ralph Allen, that's what he would have been in.
Yeah, your daddy and both of my brothers were in the reserves. And a lot of them had to stay in reserves after they got discharged, even though they'd fought in the war. Or a lot of them decided to. Both my brothers, Robert and Frank, did. But when I got discharged, I was out of the Navy. To get in reserves, I'd have to go join. So they took me on right away, sent me to Bainbridge. And James Ponton, they called him down to Richmond a week later. And they told him the same thing. You go on back home, Will. He said, no, I'm going now. He said, you can't do that. He said, Dave Mahone did it last week. So they told him, said, well, he must have joined the regular Navy. He said, well, hell, that's what I want to get in. We didn't know the difference. And said that they did tell us that you have to stay until you're 21. Well, that's fine. And James was, we thought we'd spend time together in the Navy. And the only thing we did was, we had 9 weeks of boot camp. 8 of them we had spent together in barracks about far near to the front door, apart. So I'd see him. But after that, I got out of boot camp, went home for 7-month, 9-day leave, and James Ponton got home the day that I was going to leave. And I left him in my bed, drunk as a scoop, when I went back to Bainbridge. And I didn't see him anymore until I was down in San Diego. And a boy on that ship was from Alta Vista, or Gretna really. And he came down one Sunday, I was asleep. He came down and woke me up and said, the ship your buddy's on is coming down into port. Boxer, aircraft carrier. And so I was one of the 2 people that ran the captain's gig, and I went to the duty officer and told him the story. I said, can I take a gig and go and pick up my buddy? And he said, yeah. So I did. And then Grace had come out. We'd gotten married while I was home on leave after I came back from the Philippines. And she came out to California to live with me.
So what year are we in now? Is this 1946?
7.
47.
47, okay. You guys got married in 47?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I was on 50.
what was the name of the ship you were on?
I was, the first 2 years I was in the jungle in the Philippines at a supply depot. The second largest supply depot for the Japanese invasion. The largest one is at Guam. The second was at Calico, which I was on. And we